I became my ex-husband's daughter's teacher, unaware she was the daughter I thought I lost. The child sitting across from me had my birthmark. The exact same crescent-shaped mark behind her left ear that I touch whenever I'm nervous. She hummed the lullaby my grandmother taught me, a melody so rare I'd never heard another soul sing it. And she was born on the exact day they told me my baby died. Julian's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of my desk. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. My mother told me it was an adoption. A baby who needed a home. I was grieving, Mara. I wasn't thinking clearly. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. 6 years of buried pain rose in my throat like bile. You weren't thinking clearly. Julian, look at her. Really look at Lila. She has my eyes. My birthmark. She was born the same day our daughter supposedly died. The same day your mother told me my baby didn't make it. He stared at me, and I watched the color drain from his face as understanding crashed over him like a wave. No. That's impossible. My mother wouldn't. She couldn't have. Wouldn't she? I leaned forward, my voice dropping to barely a whisper. Evelyn Hart, who made it crystal clear that a struggling teacher had no place in the Hartwell legacy. Who told me at the hospital that sometimes it's better when these things end early. Julian stumbled backward, his breathing shallow and rapid. Oh God. Mara, what did she do? What did my mother do? Have you ever been told to move on from something that never felt right? Have you ever trusted the wrong people with your deepest grief? What would you do if you discovered the child you mourned for 6 years was alive, and you'd been teaching her without even knowing it? Welcome to Mr. Stevens Stories, where we bring you real-life narratives that will move your soul. If you've ever felt that gut instinct that something wasn't right, that nagging feeling that refused to go away, then this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button right now because this channel is growing, and you don't want to miss stories that will shake you to your core. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end of this one. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The September morning air carried the scent of fresh chalk and possibility as I arranged name tags on 22 small desks. 6 years of teaching had taught me that first days were magic. Nervous smiles, oversized backpacks, the promise of new beginnings. Yet today, my hands trembled slightly as I placed the final tag. Lila Hart. Something about that name whispered through my consciousness like a half-remembered dream. I shook my head, dismissing the feeling. I'd moved to Brighton Bay for a fresh start, leaving behind the ghosts that haunted me in the city. This was supposed to be my new chapter. Clean slate. No more looking back at the past that had shattered me into pieces. The bell chimed at 8:30 sharp, and children flooded into the classroom like a kaleidoscope of laughter and excitement. I greeted each one with practiced warmth, learning names and calming anxious parents. Mrs. Chen dropped off her son with detailed instructions about his peanut allergy. Mr. Rodriguez reminded me that his daughter was shy but loved art. Everything felt normal, routine, safe. Then she appeared. A small girl with dark curls cascading past her shoulders, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit that had clearly seen better days. She stood in the doorway, observing the chaos with quiet, intelligent eyes. When our gazes met, the world tilted on its axis. Those eyes. Deep brown with flecks of amber that caught the morning light streaming through the windows. My breath caught in my throat, trapped there like a bird in a cage. Good morning, I managed, my voice steadier than my racing heart. You must be Lila. The child nodded, shy but observant. As she moved past me to find her desk, I noticed it. A crescent-shaped birthmark behind her left ear, partially hidden by those dark curls. My hand instinctively went to my own neck, touching the identical mark I'd had since birth. Coincidence, I told myself firmly. Just coincidence. Plenty of people have birthmarks. Plenty of children have brown eyes with amber flecks. But as the morning progressed, small moments accumulated like drops of water wearing away stone. During art time, Lila hummed while coloring. Not just any tune, but a lullaby I had sung obsessively during my pregnancy 6 years ago. A melody my own grandmother had taught me, so rare and specific that I'd never heard another soul sing it outside my family. My hands froze on the papers I was grading. The melody continued, soft and perfect, from Lila's desk in the corner. When Lila smiled at a classmate's joke about a cartoon character, a distinctive dimple appeared in her left cheek. The same dimple I saw in the mirror every single day of my life. My vision blurred. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door behind me and gripping the sink until my knuckles turned white. This was impossible. I was seeing things that weren't there, connecting dots that had no business being connected. Grief did strange things to people. I knew this. I'd spent 6 years learning to live with the massive hole in my heart. During reading time, Lila approached my desk with her worn rabbit tucked under one arm. She looked up at me with those impossibly familiar eyes. "Miss Elwood?" Her voice was small, tentative. "Yes, sweetheart. My grandma says my mommy went to sleep forever. Does that mean she's in heaven?" The question, innocent and devastating, struck me like a physical blow. The classroom walls seemed to close in around me. I had to grip the desk to keep myself steady. "I'm sure your mommy loved you very much," I whispered, barely maintaining composure. "Sometimes people have to go away, but that doesn't mean they stop loving us." Lila nodded solemnly, then returned to her seat. I watched her go, this small child who carried my birthmark, sang my grandmother's lullaby, and had my dimple. That evening, I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by boxes I'd never fully unpacked. Moving to Brighton Bay 6 months ago was supposed to be a fresh start, far from the memories that haunted me in the city. Away from the hospital where I'd lost everything. Away from the life I'd built with Julian before it all came crashing down. I pulled out a folder I kept hidden in the back of my closet. Medical records from that terrible time. My hands shook as I reviewed the documents I'd read 1,000 times before, each word seared into my memory. The delivery had been emergency surgery at a private clinic, not the hospital I'd planned. I'd been sedated, heavily medicated for complications. Preeclampsia, they'd said. Life-threatening. When I woke, Julian's mother Evelyn had been there, standing at the foot of my bed with her lips pressed into a thin line and her eyes cold as winter. "The baby didn't make it, dear. Sometimes these things happen. Best to move forward." I'd been too shattered to question, too drugged to demand details. Julian had stood silent in the corner of that sterile room, his face unreadable, his expensive suit somehow out of place among the medical equipment. Within days, he'd thrown himself into his company, Hartwell Dynamics, barely speaking to me. The divorce papers arrived 3 months later, delivered by courier like a business transaction. Now, examining the records with fresh eyes and a heart that refused to stop whispering impossible questions, I noticed inconsistencies I'd missed before. The attending physician's signature was illegible, just a scrawl that could have been anything. No death certificate had been attached to my file. The hospital listed wasn't even a hospital, just a clinic name I didn't recognize. Seaside Women's Health Center. I'd never heard of it before that day, and I'd never thought to question it in my grief. My laptop glowed in the darkness as I began to search. Lila Hart, age 6. School records listed her birth date as March 15th. The exact day my daughter was supposed to have been born. Legal guardian was listed as Julian Hart. Mother was listed simply as deceased. My hands covered my mouth, stifling a sob that threatened to escape and shatter the silence of my apartment. The following afternoon, I requested the standard parent-teacher conference forms from the main office. My colleague, Beth, raised an eyebrow. "Already requesting conferences? School's barely started." "Just being proactive," I said, keeping my voice light. "Getting to know the families early." When pickup time arrived at 3:15, I positioned myself near the window, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Parents arrived in minivans and sedans, chatting with each other about soccer practice and piano lessons. Then a sleek black car pulled up, expensive and corporate, completely out of place among the practical family vehicles. The man who emerged made my knees weak. Julian. Older, more refined, but unmistakably him. His dark hair was now touched with silver at the temples, his expensive suit perfectly tailored to his frame. He'd built his tech company into an empire, I'd heard through mutual acquaintances I'd tried to avoid. Hartwell Dynamics was everywhere now. Smartphones, security systems, artificial intelligence applications. The struggling startup he'd been building when we met had become a billion-dollar corporation. Lila ran to him with pure joy lighting up her face, and his expression transformed with genuine affection as he scooped her up. Whatever else he might be, whatever role he might have played in this impossible situation, he clearly loved this child. This child. My child. I watched them drive away, then collapsed into my desk chair, staring at nothing. Principal Cole Ramirez found me there an hour later when he was making his rounds before locking up the building. Mara. The building's closing soon. You okay? I looked up at him. Cole had been kind since I'd started at Oak Ridge Primary, always supportive, always professional. Cole, I said slowly, carefully weighing each word. I need to ask you something. Lila Hart's enrollment papers. Who filled them out? Cole's brow furrowed with concern. Her father, I believe. Julian Hart. Tech mogul, very generous donor to the school. He funded our new computer lab last year. He studied my face. Why? Is something wrong? Is Lila having trouble in class? No, nothing like that. She's wonderful. Bright, kind, observant. I paused. I just need to see those papers. Every page. It's important. Cole hesitated, then nodded slowly. I'll pull them for you tomorrow morning. But Mara, if there's something going on, you need to tell me. I will, I promised. As soon as I understand it myself. That night, after Cole had reluctantly provided me with copies of Lila's enrollment file, I sat cross-legged on my living room floor with documents spread before me like puzzle pieces that refused to form a complete picture. Lila's medical history showed vaccinations starting at 6 months old, regular checkups, normal childhood illnesses. But nothing before 6 months. No birth certificate on file. Just a notation in Julian's handwriting that made my blood run cold. Adoption records sealed by court order. If this story is touching something deep in you, please take a second to subscribe. Most people listening right now aren't subscribed, and it's the only way YouTube knows to bring you more stories like this. You're not just watching, you're part of this channel. Thank you as you subscribe right now. Adoption. The word echoed in my mind, bouncing off the walls of possibility and impossibility. My hand shook as I reached for my phone, Julian's old number still saved in my contacts after all these years. I'd never been able to delete it, even when every rational part of me said I should. My finger hovered over the call button. What would I say? Hello Julian, I think you're raising our daughter who supposedly died. He'd think I was insane. Or cruel. Or both. He'd hang up, maybe file a restraining order, definitely pull Lila from my class. I needed proof. Real, undeniable, irrefutable proof. The next morning, I sent a formal parent-teacher conference request through the school's official system. Professional. Routine. Nothing to raise suspicion. I chose my words carefully, typing and deleting and typing again. Dear Mr. Hart, I hope this message finds you well. Lila is doing wonderfully in class and has already made several friends. I would love to discuss her progress and ensure we are meeting all her educational and emotional needs. Would you be available for a conference this week? Best regards, Mara Elwood. Julian's response came within an hour, making my phone buzz against my desk during math lesson. Of course. Thursday at 4 p.m. works for me. I appreciate you taking such interest in Lila's well-being. Thursday arrived with agonizing slowness. I changed outfits 3 times that morning, finally settling on professional but understated. A navy blue dress that looked teacherly and appropriate. I rehearsed conversations in my head, each one more impossible than the last. How did you casually ask someone if they'd stolen your child? At 3:55, I sat in my classroom with hands folded on my desk to hide their trembling. Through the window, I watched his car arrive. Watched him check his reflection in the rearview mirror, straighten his tie with precise movements. He looked nervous too, which struck me as strange. What did he have to be nervous about? The knock came precisely at 4 o'clock. "Come in," I called, my voice surprisingly steady. Julian entered, and for a moment, we simply stared at each other across the space of 6 years and 1,000 unspoken words. Recognition dawned slowly in his eyes, spreading like sunrise across his features. Shock, then confusion, then something I couldn't quite read. "Mara?" My name cracked on his lips. I didn't. "I had no idea you were teaching here. I didn't know you were even in Brighton Bay." "Hello, Julian." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the small one meant for parent conferences. "Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss." He sank into the chair, looking utterly lost in a way I'd never seen him look before. Julian Hart, CEO of a billion-dollar company, reduced to confusion in a first-grade classroom. "I moved here 6 months ago," I said, keeping my tone professional even as my heart threatened to beat out of my chest. Fresh start. New life. Away from painful memories. Julian's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Mara, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. For everything. For how things ended between us. For not being there when you needed me. Tell me about Lila." I interrupted, unable to bear pleasantries when the truth sat between us like a living thing. "Tell me where she came from." The question hung in the air, heavy with implications that neither of us could ignore. Julian's face went pale, the color draining from his cheeks like water from a broken glass. "My mother," he began slowly, each word clearly difficult to form. "She told me about an adoption opportunity. Shortly after we lost our baby. He couldn't meet my eyes. She said a young mother had died in childbirth. No family. The child needed a home immediately. I was grieving. Not thinking clearly. Mother handled all the paperwork. She said it would help me heal. Give me purpose. And you never questioned it?" My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. "Never asked to see birth records? Death certificates? Medical history? Nothing?" "I trusted my mother," Julian said quietly, and something in his voice broke. "And I was drowning, Mara. Losing you, losing our child. I wasn't capable of questioning anything. I could barely get out of bed in the morning. The company was falling apart. My investors were threatening to pull out. When mother brought Lila home, this tiny, perfect baby who needed me, I held on. She became my anchor. I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. I paced to the window where children were playing on the playground, their laughter a stark contrast to the tension crackling inside this small room. "Julian, look at her. Really look at Lila. I don't understand what you're asking me." I turned to face him, and every wall I'd built around my heart for 6 years started to crumble. "She has my birthmark. The crescent moon shape behind her left ear. Exactly where mine is. She has my eyes, Julian. Not just brown, but that specific shade with amber flecks that I inherited from my mother. She hums the lullaby my grandmother taught me. A melody so specific, so rare, that I've never heard another person sing it in my entire life. And she has your dimple. The one that appears when you smile. Julian stared at me like I was speaking a language he didn't understand. How old is Lila, Julian? 6. She just turned 6 last month. My voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The same month our daughter was born. The exact same day, actually. March 15th. I watched understanding crash over his features like a wave hitting the shore. Horror bloomed in his eyes, followed by disbelief, followed by a dawning comprehension that seemed to physically hurt him. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the linoleum floor with a sound that made me flinch. No. That's impossible. My mother wouldn't. She couldn't have. But even as he said the words, doubt flickered across his face like shadows from a candle flame. Wouldn't she? I challenged, stepping closer to him. Evelyn Hart, who thought I wasn't good enough for her son from the moment we met. Who made it crystal clear that a struggling teacher with student loans had no place in the Hartwell legacy. Who told me herself, at the hospital after the delivery, that sometimes it's better when these things end early. Julian stumbled backward like I'd physically struck him. His breathing became shallow and rapid. What are you saying, Mara? Are you telling me that Lila is? That our daughter didn't actually die? I'm saying that I think your mother lied to both of us. I'm saying that I think she took our daughter and made us both believe she was dead. I'm saying that the child you've been raising for 6 years might be the baby I mourned. Oh God. Julian's legs seemed to give out. He caught himself on the desk. Oh God. Mara, what did she do? What did my mother do? I think, I said, my own voice shaking now, we need to find out together. If this story is gripping you the way it gripped me when I first heard it, please subscribe to this channel, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you would do in this situation. Would you confront immediately or gather evidence first? Your engagement helps this channel grow and bring you more stories that matter. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of revelation and horror. Julian and I formed an uneasy alliance, bound together by a truth too terrible to face alone. He hired a private investigator, a woman named Rebecca Chen who specialized in adoption fraud and medical malpractice. I'd never thought those words would apply to my life, but there I was, sitting in her office, recounting the worst day of my existence. Walk me through everything you remember about the delivery, Rebecca said, her pen poised over a notepad. I closed my eyes, forcing myself back to that day. I was 32 weeks pregnant. I'd been feeling unwell for days. Headaches. Swelling. My blood pressure was elevated at my regular checkup. The doctor said it was preeclampsia and that we needed to deliver immediately. Which doctor? Rebecca asked. I don't remember his name. It wasn't my regular OB. She was out of town. This was someone from the clinic they sent me to. Seaside Women's Health Center. Rebecca's pen stopped moving. Not a hospital. They said the hospital was full. Emergency C-sections happening. They had an arrangement with this private clinic for overflow cases. Julian spoke up from his position by the window. My mother recommended that clinic. She said she knew the staff. That they were the best. Rebecca and I exchanged a look that made my stomach turn. Go on, Rebecca prompted gently. I remember being wheeled into surgery. The anesthesiologist. The bright lights. Then nothing until I woke up. Evelyn was there. She told me the baby didn't make it. That there were complications. That sometimes these things happen with premature births. And you didn't see the baby? Hold her. See a body? The question cut like a knife. No. Evelyn said it would be too traumatic. That I should remember my daughter as she was, not as she became. I was so drugged, so devastated. I didn't think to question it. Rebecca made notes, her expression carefully neutral. Mr. Hart, tell me about the adoption. Julian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I remembered from our marriage when he was stressed. 3 months after Mara and I separated, my mother told me about a baby. She said a young woman had died in childbirth at the same clinic where Mara had delivered. No family. The baby needed a home immediately or she'd go into the foster system. Mother said she'd already started the paperwork. That it was meant to be. A way for me to heal. And you signed documents? Yes. Adoption papers. I remember signing them, but I never read them carefully. Mother had her lawyers handle everything. She said it would be faster, cleaner. I was barely functioning at that point. Rebecca leaned back in her chair. I need to be honest with you both. What you're describing sounds like adoption fraud. Possibly baby trafficking. If your mother paid clinic staff to fake a stillbirth and then adopt the child to you under false pretenses, that's multiple felonies. The words hung in the air like smoke. Julian looked like he might be sick. Over the next week, Rebecca worked her magic. She discovered that Seaside Women's Health Center had closed 2 years ago amid financial irregularities. She tracked down a nurse who'd worked there, a woman named Patricia Gomez who agreed to meet with us in exchange for immunity. We met at a coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Patricia was in her 50s, with tired eyes and hands that shook slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee mug. I've been waiting for someone to ask questions, she said quietly. I've been carrying this guilt for 6 years. What happened? I asked, my voice barely audible. Patricia looked directly at me. Your baby was born healthy. Small, because she was premature, but her lungs were good. Her heart rate was strong. She cried right away. It was a beautiful sound. Tears streamed down my face. Julian reached over and squeezed my hand, the first physical contact we'd had in 6 years. Mrs. Hart, the elder Mrs. Hart, she was in the delivery room, Patricia continued. That was unusual, but she'd made substantial donations to the clinic. She had privileges. When your daughter was born, Mrs. Hart took her. She said she'd bring the baby to you for skin-to-skin contact. But she didn't. She took the baby to a private room we had set up. And then? Rebecca prompted when Patricia fell silent. Then Dr. Morrison, the surgeon who performed your C-section, he came out and told everyone the baby had died. Complications from premature birth, he said. I saw him take money from Mrs. Hart. A lot of money. Cash in an envelope. You saw this? Julian's voice was strained. I saw it. And I said nothing because I needed my job. Because Dr. Morrison threatened me. Because I was a coward. Patricia wiped her eyes. 3 months later, I heard through the grapevine that Julian Hart had adopted a baby girl. Same age. I knew then what had happened, but what could I do? I had no proof. Just what I'd seen. You have proof now, Rebecca said gently. Your testimony. And I've subpoenaed the clinic's financial records before they were destroyed. There's a paper trail of payments from Evelyn Hart to the clinic. Multiple large payments in the months before and after Mara's delivery. I couldn't speak. Couldn't process the magnitude of what had been done to us. Julian's voice was hollow when he finally spoke. I need to confront my mother. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this story, please subscribe. It takes weeks to write stories like this, and your support helps me keep creating them for you. Thank you for being here. We drove to the Hartwell estate together, a sprawling property behind iron gates that I'd only visited a handful of times during our marriage. Evelyn had made it clear I wasn't welcome in the family seat. Now I understood why. She'd never intended for me to be part of this family. She'd been working to eliminate me from the start. The housekeeper led us to Evelyn's private sitting room, a place decorated in whites and silvers that felt as cold as the woman herself. Evelyn sat in a high-backed chair, a book in her lap, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when we entered, and I watched her face shift from surprise to calculation in a heartbeat. "Julian, darling. And Mara. What an unexpected visit. Mother." Julian's voice was ice. "We need to talk about Lila." "What about her? Is she doing well in school?" Evelyn's eyes flicked to me. "I assume Miss Elwood is taking good care of her education." "Cut the act," I said, surprised by the steel in my own voice. "We know what you did." Evelyn carefully marked her place in her book and set it aside. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." Julian moved forward, and I'd never seen him look so much like his mother. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous. "You paid the clinic to fake a stillbirth. You took our daughter and told Mara she was dead. Then you gave her to me under the pretense of adoption. We have witness testimony. Financial records. Everything." For a long moment, Evelyn said nothing. Then she smiled, and it was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. "So you figured it out. Took you long enough. How could you?" Julian's voice broke. "How could you do something so monstrous?" Evelyn stood, smoothing her designer dress. "I did what was necessary. That woman," she gestured at me dismissively, "was never going to be a suitable mother for a Hartwell. A teacher with student loans and a tiny apartment. Please. I gave Lila everything she could ever need. The best schools. The best clothes. A proper home. She's thriving." "You stole my child," I whispered. "I saved her," Evelyn corrected. "From a life of mediocrity. From a mother who could barely support herself. Look at Lila now. She's confident, educated, happy. She has every advantage." Julian stepped between us. "You're insane. You committed multiple felonies. Fraud. Falsifying medical records. Baby trafficking." "Prove it," Evelyn said calmly. "My lawyers are the best money can buy. And even if you do prove it, even if you drag this through court and destroy our family name, what do you think it will do to Lila? She knows me as grandmother. She's had 6 years of stability. You'll tear her world apart." The threat hung in the air. Because she was right. Whatever we did next would impact Lila most of all. "You're going to pay for what you did," I said quietly. "Not because of money or family name or any of that. Because what you did was evil. And Lila deserves to know the truth." We left that house and went straight to a lawyer. Then to family court. The next weeks were a whirlwind of legal filings, DNA tests that confirmed what we already knew in our hearts, and preparing for the battle ahead. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Judge Helen Moore presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Evelyn sat with her legal team, composed and confident. Julian sat beside me, and for the first time in 6 years, we were united. Rebecca had prepared our case meticulously. Medical records showing the inconsistencies in my delivery. Financial records proving the payments from Evelyn to the clinic. Patricia Gomez's testimony, shaking but clear. The sealed adoption records, which the judge had ordered opened, showing forged documents and lies. The DNA test results were entered into evidence. 99.9% probability that I was Lila's biological mother. Dr. Naomi Keller, a child psychologist we'd hired, testified about the importance of truth in a child's development. Children are remarkably resilient, Dr. Keller explained to the court. But that resilience is built on a foundation of trust. When that trust is broken by lies, even well-intentioned ones, it creates fractures that can last a lifetime. Lila deserves to know her truth. To know that her mother didn't abandon her, but was lied to. To know that love didn't fail her. Deception did. Evelyn's lawyers argued about Lila's best interests. About the disruption to her life. About the stability she'd had for 6 years. They painted Evelyn as a concerned grandmother who'd made a difficult choice in impossible circumstances. Then Julian took the stand, and I watched him transform into someone I'd never seen before. Not the grieving man who'd signed away our marriage. Not the CEO who'd built an empire. Just a father who'd been lied to. "I love my daughter," he said, his voice steady. "I have loved her from the moment I held her. But that love was built on a lie my mother told me. She manipulated my grief. She used my pain to commit a crime. And in doing so, she stole 6 years from Lila's real mother. 6 years of birthdays and first steps and bedtime stories that Mara will never get back." He looked directly at his mother. "I trusted you. I believed you when you said you wanted what was best for me. But you didn't. You wanted control. And you were willing to destroy lives to get it. When it was my turn to testify, I spoke directly to Judge Moore. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because my daughter deserves to know she was wanted. She was loved. I didn't leave her. I would never have left her. Someone took that choice from me." My voice shook but didn't break. "I don't want to disrupt Lila's life any more than necessary. I want what's best for her. But she deserves the truth. And she deserves to have her real mother in her life." The judge took 3 days to deliberate. When we returned to the courtroom for the verdict, I could barely breathe. Judge Moore looked at each of us in turn before speaking. "This court has reviewed all evidence presented. The DNA test confirms without doubt that Mara Elwood is the biological mother of the child known as Lila Hart. The evidence also shows a pattern of fraud, falsified documents, and conspiracy to commit adoption fraud." She turned to Evelyn. "Mrs. Hart, your actions were not those of a concerned grandmother. They were criminal. You will face charges for fraud, falsifying medical documents, and conspiracy. This court strips you of all custodial rights and orders no contact with the minor child pending criminal proceedings." Evelyn's face remained composed, but I saw her hands grip the armrests of her chair. "As for custody," Judge Moore continued, "this court recognizes that Lila has spent 6 years with Julian Hart as her primary caregiver. Disrupting that relationship entirely would not serve her best interests. However, Mara Elwood was denied her parental rights through fraud and deception." The judge looked at both of us. "Therefore, this court orders temporary joint custody. A gradual integration plan will be developed with Dr. Keller's guidance. Both parents will participate in family therapy sessions. Lila will remain in her current school for stability. And most importantly, Lila will be told the truth in an age-appropriate way with professional support." I burst into tears. Julian reached over and took my hand, and this time, I didn't pull away. The next phase was the hardest. Dr. Keller met with Lila privately first, preparing her for a conversation that would change her understanding of the world. Then we sat together in Dr. Keller's office, the three of us, with Lila looking small and confused in a chair between Julian and me. "Lila," Dr. Keller began gently, "do you remember when you asked your teacher about your mommy? About where she went?" Lila nodded, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. "Well, something very important happened when you were born. Something that wasn't true. You were told your mommy went to sleep forever. But that's not what happened." Lila's eyes widened. "She didn't go to heaven." "No, sweetheart. Your mommy has been alive this whole time. In fact, she's been looking for you without even knowing it." Lila looked at me, those amber-flecked eyes studying my face. "Miss Elwood?" I nodded, tears streaming freely now. "Yes, baby. I'm your mommy. I didn't leave you. I thought I'd lost you, but you were here all along. But Grandma said. Grandma lied, Julian said, his voice gentle but firm. She told lies to a lot of people. Lies that hurt your real mommy very much. But none of this is your fault, Lila. You didn't do anything wrong. Lila processed this with the seriousness of a child trying to understand adult complexity. Finally, she looked at me with a question that broke my heart. So you didn't leave me? You wanted to keep me? I knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in mine. I never left you. Not for 1 second. Someone took you from me before I even got to hold you. But I've thought about you every single day for 6 years. I've loved you every single day, even when I thought you were gone. Lila studied my face for a long moment. Then she leaned forward and hugged me, her small arms wrapping around my neck. I held my daughter for the first time in 6 years and sobbed into her dark curls. The next months were a careful dance of adjustment. Lila spent weekdays with Julian in the home she'd always known, and weekends with me in my apartment that I slowly transformed into a place that could hold a child's laughter. We had family dinners together, the three of us navigating this strange new dynamic. Julian and I weren't in love anymore. Too much had happened, too much time had passed. But we were learning to be partners in parenting. Learning to communicate. Learning to put Lila first. One Saturday, 6 months after the court ruling, the three of us walked along Brighton Bay's shoreline. Lila ran ahead, collecting shells and sea glass, her laughter carried on the ocean breeze. Julian and I walked side by side, watching her. She's happy, Julian said quietly. Really happy. I was afraid the truth would break her. Children are stronger than we think, I replied. And she has 2 parents now who love her and are finally being honest with her. That's more than a lot of kids have. I'm sorry, Mara. For not being there 6 years ago. For not questioning my mother. For all of it. I looked at him, this man I'd once loved, who'd been as much a victim of Evelyn's schemes as I was. We were both manipulated. Both lied to. We can't change the past. But we can make sure Lila's future is different. Lila ran back to us, holding up a perfect sand dollar. Look what I found. It's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to admire it. Can we keep it? Put it in my room. Which room? Julian asked gently. Your room at my house or your room at Mommy's? Lila thought about this seriously. Both rooms. We can break it in half so I have a piece in each place. Then I'll always have something from the beach no matter where I am. I met Julian's eyes over her head. Our daughter, figuring out how to navigate 2 homes with a wisdom beyond her years. That's a perfect idea, I said, hugging her close. Later that evening, after Julian had taken Lila home, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and thought about everything that had happened. Evelyn was awaiting trial, facing serious charges. Her lawyers were still fighting, but the evidence was overwhelming. Justice was slow, but it was coming. I'd lost 6 years I could never reclaim. 6 years of first words and first steps, of scraped knees and bedtime stories. 6 years of being a mother that had been stolen from me by someone who thought love could be manufactured and controlled. But I'd also gained something precious. Not just my daughter back, but the knowledge that I'd never stopped being a mother. Even when the world told me my child was gone, something in me had recognized her the moment she walked into my classroom. Mother's instinct, people called it. I called it love that refused to die. My phone buzzed with a text from Lila. Julian must have helped her send it. The message was simple. Good night, Mommy. I love you. I typed back through tears. Good night, my beautiful girl. I love you too. Always have, always will. And as I set down my phone and looked at the framed photo of Lila I'd placed on my mantle, I realized something important. This story wasn't a tragedy. It was a triumph. Because truth had won. Love had won. And a little girl who'd been told her mother was dead now knew she was cherished by two parents who would fight the world to keep her safe. Sometimes the truth we fear most is the truth that sets us free. Love isn't about possession or control. It's about sacrifice, honesty, and courage. Evelyn Hart tried to play God with people's lives, but she forgot one thing. Truth has a way of surfacing, and a mother's instinct is a force of nature. I lost 6 years I can never reclaim. But I gained something more valuable. Not just my daughter back, but the knowledge that I never stopped being her mother. Not when they told me she was dead. Not during those 6 years of grief. Not ever. And sometimes, the family we rebuild from broken pieces is stronger than the one we lost. Because it's built on truth instead of lies. On love instead of manipulation. On hope instead of despair. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button, subscribe to Mr. Stephen's Stories for more narratives that matter, and tell me in the comments, do you believe in second chances? Do you believe that truth always finds a way? Because I do. I'm living proof. In the end, it wasn't wealth or power that won. It was truth, persistence, and a teacher's unwavering belief that something was wrong. Because mothers know. We always know. And sometimes, that knowing is enough to move mountains, tear down walls, and bring stolen children home. Thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for being part of this journey. And remember, if something feels wrong, if your instinct is screaming at you, listen. Because sometimes, that small voice inside you knows truths that the world is trying to hide. Until next time, this is Mr. Stephen's Stories, reminding you that every ending is just a new beginning waiting to unfold.